Well, actually, I would wake up to my missus. She would already have my syringe loaded up with the heroin. I'd roll over, she'd stick me, I'd wake up to being stuck. And I got used to that. It was a lot better than waking up puking.
Hello again, it's William McComb, licensed social worker and chemical dependency counselor, and I'm here today with Noah, another one of our success stories here, and I just wanted to talk a little bit with him about his success in recovery, so that maybe we could learn a little bit about the process. So welcome to the channel, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit, about yourself. How'd you get started, with drugs in the first place?
Well, I grew up in a small town, and I never really knew anything about drugs. My parents didn't drink, they didn't smoke, they didn't do really any of that. I was riding home on the bus one day, and a feller was talking about weed. And I just said, well, I'd like to try that. And just out of, curiosity, I guess is what you call it. And, we agreed to meet the following day at school, and he would bring me some. And I met him the next day, and he brought me some. He brought me a giant bag. And I started off with marijuana. I got into a lot of trouble younger. And I started to pull away from the marijuana. I thought, that was what was causing all my problems. That, it's because of the evil devil that's bringing me all my issues.
Right.
And I got older, and I realized that even without the drugs, I was still the miserable person that I'd always been, and that wasn't it. So I started to search a little bit more. I ended up with having some health issues, and they had put me on some pretty strong pain medication. And they told me one day that they couldn't give me the medication any longer because I'd started smoking again, and I'd had marijuana in my system. And that's when I ever learned about withdrawal or opiates or any of that. Up until then, I thought that if you was in pain, you took a pain pill, the pain went away, and that was the end of it. I didn't know that when the pain pills went away, you went into severe withdrawal. And I was taking 2 Oxycontin 80s a day for my pain. I would take between 2 to 3 30s for breakthrough pain, and consume copious amounts of marijuana, alcohol, anything else I could get into my system. I continued on that path, I'd say, for probably a solid 10 years. I mean, I'd wake up every morning. I would wake up to my missus. She would already have my syringe loaded up with the heroin. I'd roll over, she'd stick me, I'd wake up to being stuck. And I got used to that. It was a lot better than waking up puking. But ever since I got the Suboxone, it's been a complete night and day, a complete difference.
That's great, man. Not the other part, but the Suboxone part. How long have you been then on Suboxone, would you say?
Let's see now, my boy will be 9. So I put the needle down 8 years ago. I found out that my ex-wife was pregnant. I threw all the heroin in the house in the trash. I threw all the needles in the trash. I got her into a Suboxone Subutex clinic. I used her medication along with her until I could get into a clinic myself. But it wasn't as easy back then as it is now to get into the Suboxone clinics. And the Suboxone clinics weren't like they are now. Back then, my Suboxone doctor, which I don't want to say anything bad about the fella, he was a great man, wonderful fella, but he would give me my prescription of Suboxone along with 90 Xanax bars and 90 somas. And we had another fella that we could give him it's like $300 or $400, and he'd meet us at the White Castle. We could get 4 prescriptions, whatever we wanted, but one of them had to be Suboxone. So of course we're going to get Oxycontins, and we're going to do those for the first 3 months,
Right.
and then take Suboxone for the last. And it didn't help, because that drug element was always still there.
Still there.
And I mean, even now, I still feel like sometimes, like, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Like I'm still dependent on something, but it's not to the point that I'm going to go out and I'm going to rob you to get it. I'm not going to hurt you to get it.
Right.
And it saved my life. It's the reason that I have all my children. It's the reason that I'm a part of their life. Without it, I'd be back in prison, or I'd be dead. I mean, there's no denying that one.
So was that the motivation then, your child?
Oh yeah.
So your wife was pregnant?
Yeah, I could never do it for myself. Like, I was never. I don't know if I was never strong enough, or if I just didn't care, or what the issue was. And honestly, I don't care. I'm clean, and I got there for, like I said, for my son, and it's been great. It's changed everything.
You mentioned, like, when you were younger, feeling like something was missing, and so you were searching for.
Yeah, see, I was adopted as a kid too, so I think a lot of that has to do with, like, I was always wondering, if, who my family really was. And I mean, I was glad with the family that I had. I love them to death, and I wouldn't trade them for the world. But, especially when you're like, you get a little bit older and you're a teenage, and it's like, you start dating and all that, and you really don't want to fall in love with your sister, end up sleeping with your sister at a party and not know it's your sister.
Right.
So it was one of those. But I mean, drugs have taken me to a lot of crazy places, and some of the places I would never want to go back to. A few of them I wouldn't mind. I mean, I'm not going to say it's all been bad. It hasn't. If it was all bad, I wouldn't have been doing it the whole time.
That's right. And it is something we almost have to acknowledge, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody wants you to say that drugs are horrible, and for the most part, they are. I mean, there's a reason that you're doing them. You're doing them because you're missing something, or you're in pain, or there's some reason behind it. But I mean, if it wasn't somewhat enjoyable, yeah, you wouldn't. People wouldn't be on it like that.
They wouldn't. You wouldn't adopt it as a lifestyle.
Oh yeah. The heroin, though, that's just the monster. I mean, out of every drug I've ever done, I mean, from methamphetamine to crack to PCP to acid, I mean, everything that you could think of, the heroin is the only thing that has grabbed a hold of me and just refused to let go. I mean, I've rolled around, I've jumped off of buildings on top of it, and it's in there. And you wake up, you think about it. You go to sleep, you think about it. The whole day, you think about it. And I could walk into a shooting gallery right now, and I would get 2 shits less. I mean, I could sit down and have a conversation with the guys, and before I couldn't do that.
So what's protecting you? I mean, what's the difference, man? I mean, just time, or is it Suboxone, or
like, I mean, when I first got clean, never in a million years, like. But then again, I didn't do it like everybody else does. Everybody says go to the AA and do the NA, and I couldn't do that because the town that I grew up in, the AA and the NA meetings were basically court orders for most people. Mm-hmm. So the people that were there because they were court ordered to be there, and they didn't want to be there. And that was just another place to go meet people, or another place to go score. And I shut my phone off for about 6 months. We moved. I didn't tell anybody where I was at besides about 4 people. And I just sort of holed up at home. Just a lot of VHS movies and a lot of marijuana.
So you had to separate yourself from that element.
I had to get away from that completely at first.
So important.
Yeah. But the more time goes on, it's easier to be around it. I mean, I don't want to choose to be around any of that, but
yeah.
I mean, I could, and I can say safely that I mean it wouldn't
faze you.
Yeah.
You told me a story not that long ago where you had saved some. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the neighbor ladies.
Yeah. And that you gave Narcan to somebody that had. What was that like, man? To be on the other side of that?
That was insane. I had to call my dad afterwards, and I mean, just apologize to him like profusely, like over and over and over again.
How come?
Because what I felt, I could only imagine, like all the times that, you know, he's seen me nodded off, or an ambulance that had to have been called, and that be your own child, you know, and it ripped my heart out. But yeah, that was really shocking.
Because oftentimes our parents are trying to get us to turn straight, you know what I mean, to get off the drugs. But we see them almost as an adversary. When you're a teenager, you want them to get out of your way.
Yeah, even as an adult, it's, you know, it's my life, and you don't know what you're talking about. You've never done drugs. Right. You can't relate to me. But yeah, that was insane.
Yeah,
and that just shows how much the drug scene's changed too since I got out. Cause
more dangerous, you mean?
Oh yeah, it's 1,000. I feel bad for the kids or anybody that's in the drug game right now.
I do too.
Like it used to be, you would go and you would buy what you were buying, and you knew what you were getting. And then people used to talk about, oh, well, you're going to get something that's laced. Not unless you pay extra for it.
Right.
Like nobody's going to give you free drugs. And now it's so cheap to manufacture that fentanyl crap at home.
It's in everything.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happened to the neighbor. The guy thought he was buying cocaine, and she thought she was getting him cocaine, and they did a couple big old lines expecting it to be coke, and it was fentanyl. And
jeez.
It almost killed them both. And I had 2 of the Narcan shots that I'd gotten from here, and that was enough to get him to where he was breathing, and it was enough to keep her alive until they came to administer more of the Narcan. But yeah, I couldn't even imagine trying to go back and do all that now.
No. I mean, they say. I mean, it's even in the marijuana now. You know?
That's why you got to be careful with that. Like I had to switch, and like because I got the whole hepatitis from all the heroin, and I've got to go through the dispensary because I don't trust that, you know, that the guy you're getting it off of is not going to put something into it, and it's just sad.
Well, and of course, you know, drug dealers sell other drugs too.
Of course.
You know, and if you find yourself even around, like you were saying earlier, it's just sometimes that is the trigger that
wrong day, wrong mood.
Yeah.
There's certain times of the month that I know that, like certain days that are coming up or anniversaries and things that I'll mark it on my calendar. I'll let my missus know. My sponsor knows ahead of time, and you know they call me a couple times that day and like, hey, are you okay? Everything good to go? And
that's awesome, man.
Seems like it's a lot easier to get through the day like that.
That's first-rate recovery work right there, man. Preparing for those moments, knowing what those moments are.
At the end of the day, I couldn't see anybody else with my boys besides me. You know, I don't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want that for them.
So when you said when you were a young person that you didn't know about drugs, and have you taken the time? I'm sure you have, but to talk to your children so that they're not in that.
My oldest boy, he just started a job last weekend actually, and we had a long talk about entering the workforce and how there's going to be things that's going to be there that you might not find with the school. You know, of course, with the corona now they don't go to school anyway, but let him know that, you know, some people can't get through the whole shift without taking a pain pill. I wasn't able to back in the day, and let him know that that's not something that you're able to do. You've already got a bullet in the chamber. You know, you got a dad that's an addict, you got a mom that's an addict, you got grandparents that were addicts. You know, it runs in our DNA, and you're not like everybody else. You know, you might not be able just to drink socially. You might not be able to smoke socially. You know, if you can, more power to you. Some of us can't, but that's my number one worry, is that all the hell and pain and torment I put my family through, my boys are going to send it right back to me. And I don't want that for them. I don't want prison for them. I don't want jail. I don't want institution. I don't want them to have to pack up and run to Mexico when they're 18 because they're afraid to go to prison for, you know, the rest of their life. Like it's taken me to some really, really crazy places, like boot camp as a kid, and
and the way that some of those boot camp recoveries that they're
I woke up in the middle of the night, like I was sound asleep, and I woke up to very large Hawaiian guy that just threw me against the wall, and I got on an airplane in Columbus Airport, and I got off the airplane in Spokane, Washington, and I was in a boot camp in the mountains in Idaho.
I've heard about these
yeah.
places. They're mostly outlawed now because of just how extreme they were.
The place that I was at has had lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, and like some of my drug use, I attribute some of that to that. I mean, I
It's
really
traumatic.
do. Oh yeah, it's
Dehumanizing.
oh yeah. They'd make us dig big giant holes to take out the tap roots of the trees so they could sell these roots to make jewelry boxes and stuff. And they'd say, well, see, now you're in your hole just like your life and you're stuck in it. But just like you and just like life, you're a piece of crap, and crap floats. And they'd put water in the hole, and we'd sit in the hole until it would fill full of water and you could get out of the hole.
And that's supposed to make you better.
Oh, it just, yeah, I was so angry and bitter, and when I got out of there. Like,
and angry at your parents.
Yeah. And then, I mean, and the states know better. They send you to the penitentiary to rehabilitate you. And I went in a normal kid, man. I smoked a little bit of dope, and that was really about it. And I left, I left a convict. I mean, I've been back multiple times since. It's been years, thank to God, since I've been back. But, it's all that builds up. I mean, it eventually, it's either you do drugs or you start hurting people or you go crazy. And, I didn't want to go back to prison and hurt people, and I'm crazy enough, so the drugs was my outlet, I guess.
Yeah, right. And so what have you found different about, the approach you're taking now to that hardcore approach, where it was boot camp style? Because obviously here we don't run that, we run a more supportive. So why do you think that's better, man? I mean, why is it better to?
Well, for some people, and I'd say at times in my life, I needed that boot camp environment. I needed somebody to kick my ass and say, look, you're being a dick. You're not doing things the way you need to do it, and you need to fix it. But on the other hand, it is nice to have somebody on the other side to be able to talk to, because I know that at any given time I could call and somebody from here would be there to help. Mm-hmm. And, previously that wasn't the case. I mean, the other doctor's offices, you would call them, and the only time they would answer was if, it was close to time for you to go back to the doctor and they were going to get more money from you. They cared not at all about your sobriety. They didn't care about, it was money to them.
So the human element and the caring.
And you still today, you have to be very, very careful on where you go to. There's a lot of places that you can go to that you can get Suboxone, and you're going to find a lot of places that's like that.
Yeah.
It's all about the money. They don't care about your sobriety. They just don't. And it's sad.
I know they're out there. They're out there. And I also know that there's still a thriving market for Suboxone on the street. It's become so easy to get. If you have an opioid use disorder, you can go to any number of clinics and get this medication. Why do you think people still are doing it out like the wrong way?
Well, you figure if you're a junkie or you're an ex-junkie or you're an addict and you're trying to come off of it, most of the time you don't have a job. You're not in the position to where you can come up with the money to pay for those first or second appointments. And really your only concern is not being sick.
At that point.
And I think if it wasn't for that sickness, I would have never had an issue kicking the heroin. But that's why it grabs a hold of you.
It is.
And
the withdrawal we're talking about.
The withdrawal is miserable. Like
torture.
It's Corona times 10.
It's human torture.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's
as
nothing.
Bad as it gets.
Especially when you get to where you're doing, between like a gram at a time, and you're doing that 4 or 5 times a day. I've laid and sweated and shook and vomited and crapped all over myself. It's
right.
miserable. And there's nothing that you can do to stop it besides go get more heroin.
And if this was something that we could just quit because of willpower or some other, we would all do it because the life becomes so livable, but we stay in that trap.
I was able to walk away originally when I first started. I was able to quit. I'd quit 3 or 4 times, but I was only doing a bag here and there, and it's like if you're only doing eating a couple of Viking in a day, you're really not going to get too awful sick when you come off of it. So it was like I had a mild flu, but when you got into it hardcore, I mean, it's like nothing that you've ever. Nothing you've ever even dealt with.
It's ridiculous.
Like that movie Train Spotting has it dead on.
It
like,
does. That's as good as I've
exactly.
seen. Yeah, that was so accurate. Yeah, I would just encourage anybody, who's out there struggling to.
There's help. There's people that
you
actually
can do
care.
It, right? Yeah. And you don't have to live like that.
No, and I've met so many great people. I mean, not just the staff. I mean, just other guys that come here and ladies that come here that I have outside relationships I talk to on a regular basis with. And, it's nice to go someplace and know that there's other people there that got the same issue that you got, that you're not an oddball, that,
right.
That other people struggle too. There's other addicts, that other people need this medication. You're not weak because you're taking it. It's there to help you. And if you take it and you do it the way you're supposed to do it, it can definitely help you.
Yeah.
You do it how you're not supposed to do it, it can take you to some dark places and really hurt you. But that's with anything. I mean,
right. Yeah, absolutely. How you apply it,
yes.
and that's why again I'd love to see people who are struggling find their way to a respectable clinic and do it the right way and get their life right. So last little bit, man, what's next for you? I mean, what's on the horizon for Noah?
Well, my focus is just sort of been on the boys, and with the whole coronavirus thing hitting, it's sort of put a stop in everything. Mm-hmm. I'd like to go back to school. I'd like to do something with, I devoted my life to drugs, so it's really sort of hard to do anything. And besides that, if I'm able to, get in and help some younger kids or, stop it before it would start, that'd be great. Like
you'd be good at that.
Like I'd love to find a facility or something like that where I could go in and I could just help them and talk with them. And because there's none of that. Like I started young. I did it for years and years and years. I've done the jails. I've done the prisons. I've done the children's institutions. Like there's not much they could really throw at me. Like,
that you don't know.
Yeah.
And I think kids young people, adolescents, will respond better to a person like you who has the real lived-in experience than they will maybe their parents, like we were talking about earlier. And so
that was always my thing too when I was younger was
you needed a mentor.
Yeah, well that, and I had all these people telling me that drugs were bad that never done drugs, and it's like, well, how can you tell me something's bad when you've never experimented yourself?
Right.
I won't say that all my drug experiences have been bad. I've had some very good drug experiences. But the mushrooms, I've had some great times with that where I've learned a lot about myself. And I think that if you do certain things in small dosages, how it's supposed to be done, that everything has a benefit to it. But I don't know.
Certain people.
I don't know how to word that.
Maybe shouldn't veer into.
Yeah,
something.
I'm not definitely not promoting it at all. I'm just saying that for me, like I was able to gather some things out of it. Like I was able to learn a little bit more. So not all of it has been completely horrible.
Right.
There, like I said, some of it's been good. But
and I think it's again, we have to acknowledge that. If you just tell everybody it's bad, and then the kid tries it and they get some benefit, they're like, well, you're a liar.
Yeah, and
all of that
that's
was wrong.
How I am with my boys. I don't lie at all. Like, and if they ask a question, I'll tell them, like, yeah, it's marijuana. This is what you're going to expect. This is the side effects. This is what you're going to have, and you should probably wait till you're a little bit older to mess with any of that. And the same thing with anything else, like. And I know the warning signs. I know, the side effects of the drugs. And I've already told all of them, like, Dad's going to know if you're using. And Dad's really not the person that you want to find out about that.
Right.
So,
But just like if you had a family history of heart disease, you would tell your
yeah,
kids
you keep an eye out for it.
Absolutely, and you tell them about how to modify their diet or whatever. And so you're doing the same thing in a responsible way with addiction, which I think is.
Yeah, see, I didn't have that growing up. Like I said, with the whole being adopted, I didn't know that I had, mental illness and drug addiction and alcoholism and all that in my, the biological side of my family.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And we're getting, like, as a society, more open about talking about these things.
Yeah, back then it was something.
It was almost.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's going to maybe help some of our younger people. But that's why I was happy that you wanted to do this video, because I think you're an authentic representative, of the recovery process, and that you could really help a lot of people with just your story, just your lived-in experience. And I know you'd like that. You would like your lived-in experience to have some value, for others and for yourself and your family.
All that time behind bars and all that craziness has got to pay off or something.
It's got to mean something.
If it would help one little guy, that would make me smile.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully
that'd be worth all of it.
Hopefully this video is going to do just that, man.
I hope so.
But thank you for coming in and doing this, man.
Anytime.
Yeah, man.